Hey everyone. So I'm either going to be here today playing this video or you're going to have a substitute who's going to be playing this video. And what's going to happen is you're going to get the video lecture with me giving the lecture on this video. We're going to start watching Mulan and then we're going to continue doing that into the next class period. So if I feel like I'm recovering from my surgery, I'll be there, but I won't be able to talk well. And then if not, you have a substitute, and I expect you guys to be on your best behavior. So what I want you to do to start is I want you to take out your Unit 3 packets. One of them says Unit 3, Ancient Civilizations in Asia, and then under the pictures of Mulan, it says Student Resource Packet. And then the other one says Unit 3, Ancient Civilizations in Asia, and under the two pictures of Mulan, it says Student Work Packet. So you should take both of those out. I do not make many extra copies, but I do have a few extra copies if you need them. As you're taking them out, you're going to want to go to page 3 in your resource packet to do this bell ringer. And then you should go to page 6 in your worksheet packet for the worksheet on Mulan. We're going to skip page 5 for now and go to page 6. And then I am going to, if I'm there, I'm going to check your homework, page 4. And if I'm not there, I'm going to check that on Thursday. So if I'm not here, you luck out and you can do that by Thursday. For now, go to page 3 in your resource packet, and I want you to work on this bell ringer. I want you to answer, what is filial piety? And do you agree or disagree with the author of the article that you read, and why? So again, that was your homework. You should answer that. So I'm going to pause it. If the substitute's here, the substitute is going to pause this, and you can work on your bell ringer for about 3 minutes. Okay. So now I want you to stop working on your bell ringer, stop talking. You need to listen to these notes so that you can understand what you're going to be doing for Mulan. I want you to go to page 5 in your student resource packet. That's the notes section. Go to page 5. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. Okay. While you're watching Mulan, one of the things that you're going to do is you're going to look for Chinese products that you recognize in the movie. So these are the Chinese products that you're going to look for. China was known for making luxury goods, goods that a lot of elites and rich people wanted. The first of those goods was paper. Paper was an important product because China was able to have true written documents at the time compared to places like Mesopotamia where they're inscribing things into clay. So paper was used for writing, which allowed China to be very, very educated. We know a lot of their history. Another very, very important luxury good was porcelain, typically decorated with this blue design right here. Porcelain are like dishes, or we call them fine china because they're from China. The most valuable good was silk. Silk was clothing made from silkworms, woven into fabric for elite people to wear. People in China and then people worldwide started wearing these silks, especially rich people. And you'll see silk used in Mulan. Gunpowder was invented and used in China, used for fireworks and weaponry. And finally, all these goods were traded along a road called the Silk Road, which facilitated trade and contact between China and other cultures at this time. So the Silk Road wasn't an actual road. It was a road, a series of routes that connected China to places like Rome and the Mediterranean Sea, places like India, and we see products from China going into all of those regions. So it's a network of trade routes connecting China with the Middle East and Europe. So here's a typical view of the Silk Road. We're going to skip this for now. So you're not going to write this part down, but in order to understand the next two parts, you need to understand China and a lot of its history was ruled by dynasties. But when a dynasty fell, sometimes they would enter into a period of civil war. And there was a very long period of civil war where all these different groups were fighting for power. They call it the Warring States period. It was very chaotic. There was no established ruler, and a lot of different people were trying to come up with ways to establish order in society. So we have several different philosophies that are going to pop up to create unity. And one of those philosophies is still extremely popular in China. And it's you can see it in almost all aspects of that society. And that philosophy is called Confucianism. China's most influential scholar was Confucius. There are a bunch of Confucius textbooks almost, that people in China read to understand his philosophy. And his philosophy becomes the foundation of Chinese society. So, like in other units, we've talked about a social hierarchy, a social pyramid based on job. In China, for a long time in its history, the social pyramid was based on what Confucius is going to teach. And it basically is taught that the harder you work, the higher you will be in that social hierarchy. He believed that social order, keeping things orderly, in harmony, and having a good government was organized around 5 basic relationships with a foundation of respect. 5 relationships with a foundation of respect. And respect about who is superior or a little bit higher up and who is inferior or a little bit lower down in that relationship. So the person who comes second has to somewhat be submissive or obey the wishes of the person who's listed first. So I want you to look in the margins of your notes on page 5. And in the margin, it says name 5 relationships of Confucianism. And I want you to write next to each number, each of those relationships. So the first one, the most important one, is the ruler and the subject. So the ruler is listed first. So the ruler technically is superior to the person listed second, which is the subject. That means a citizen. So the ruler, and in China, that's the emperor, rules over the subject. And the subject respects that rule, but the relationship overall has to be built on respect. So the ruler not only is respected by the people, but the people also should respect the ruler. If not, that ruler will most likely lose the mandate of heaven. The second relationship is father and son. So the father is technically superior, but the father and son have to have equal respect towards one another. The third relationship is husband and wife. So the husband is superior and the wife is seen a little bit more as inferior, but they have to respect one another. Older brother and younger brother. You'll see a lot in China how age becomes a part of respect. The elderly are respected. An older brother is more respected than his younger brother. And finally, the last relationship is actually pretty even. It's friend to friend. So in order to keep society controlled, you need to have friends respecting one another, being on the same level with one another. So those are your 5 relationships. And Confucius believed that if people are respecting each other based on those 5 relationships, then society would be organized. He also believed that all humans were born naturally good. By nature, we were all born good. The only reason we would turn bad is if society turned us bad. So he wanted society to be ordered based on respect. He stressed that children should practice filial piety, which is what you guys read about, respecting your parents and respecting your elders. This also includes honoring your family and honoring your ancestors constantly throughout your life. So with that, with filial piety, we see the continued tradition of ancestor worship in China that's going to just fit right in with Confucianism. He also developed something that's called the Code of Harmony or Code of Politeness that is still used in Chinese society today that teaches you customs of how to act polite, how to bow properly to the emperor, how to act as a woman in society. And this places a great emphasis on education. When Chinese boys would go to school in ancient Chinese history, they would read books by Confucius, they would study books by Confucius, and it made them extremely educated, especially on his philosophy and the customs that were created in China based on that. Confucianism lays the groundwork for something called a civil service system. The civil service system, if you break it down, is exactly what it seems. Civil is a civilian, so a person belonging to China doing a service or working somehow for the state of China. And this is typically done with having people getting roles in the government. And it's a system in which highly educated men would gain government positions through merit or hard work. So what you would do pretty much from the age of 8, you would start going to school and you would study Confucian texts, you would study Chinese culture, you would memorize Chinese characters, learn math and science. And then by the time you were, almost like going to college for us, you would take a civil service examination. And your performance on that examination would be what determines the job that you get in the government. It would determine the job that you get in the government. If you score high, you will get a good job. If you score low, you typically would not get a position in the government, and instead you would become an artisan or a merchant, which they viewed as lower in the social classes. Over time, the ideas of Confucianism are going to spread to other countries in East Asia, and you typically in East Asia just get this overall feeling of respect, and that's kind of how their societies are organized. So that's how Confucianism works. Here are some men studying for the test, and here are some men taking the test. Another philosophy is going to take a different approach. And this philosophy said, you know what? Humans are always a little bit chaotic. So to understand how to create a well-flowing society, let's look at one that's existed for years. And let's look at nature and how nature functions and try to kind of emulate that or copy that. So this second philosophy was founded by a philosopher named Laotzi or Laotsu. And he was more interested in putting people back in touch with the powerful forces of nature. If you act as strong as a river, you'll be able to overflow or conquer things that are troubling you. If you are as peaceful as things are in nature, you will not have the urge to fight these wars anymore. So humans, he believed, needed to follow the Tao or the way. And in the Tao, it's in a book written by Laotzi, where he tells you the way to live. These are the main parts that he tells you to do. He says, in order to follow the Tao or the Tao, you must live with humility. Humility means being modest or being humble. So you shouldn't brag, or as you guys say, flex. You shouldn't flex about anything, about how educated you are, about how much money you have. He says you should live simply. Living with simplicity is better than having too much. So you should get rid of a lot of things. You should purge on your material things. You should seek inner peace constantly to try to go through your life being peaceful. And you should seek harmony with nature. The emphasis for Taoism or Taoism is nature. Being one with nature, living like nature, being peaceful like nature. So that's what Taoism looks like. And here are just some images of Laotzi, who is always based on peace. There's somebody in the movie Mulan, one of Mulan's soldier friends, the bigger guy, can't remember his name. He's the one that really represents Taoism or Taoism, because he's always trying to be peaceful. So here's making fun of people who think they're humble, but they brag about it. If you're humble, you cannot brag about anything. A symbol that you guys have probably seen that came from the philosophies of Taoism and Confucianism is the yin and the yang. Yin is typically seen as more peaceful, more passive, more down to earth. Sometimes it's tied to females. And then yang is seen as more active, more aggressive, and more male-based. But when you're looking at it, you're looking at the fact that the two blend together, because what it's saying is you have these two sides within you and within society, but the yin and yang is put together to create a balance of both of those sides. And so the yin and yang is this ancient Chinese philosophy that has two opposite powers, but when put together, they create a beautiful balance in life. And it almost represents the opposites of Confucianism and Taoism. So in Confucianism, you have, this strict values of respect and education. And then with Taoism, you have this harmony and peace with nature. And when those two are blended together, you have this perfect society. And that's almost what the yin and yang is. When you combine those two sides of yourself and you look at the balance, that creates a good and orderly balance within you. You have both the yin and the yang. Sometimes people are more yin and sometimes people are more yang, but you do have both. The last philosophy is known as legalism. This one's a little bit more interesting and more where warfare comes into play. In legalism, it's believed that humankind is actually evil when you're born, and you need a strong government to control you. Society, according to the philosopher who founded legalism, society functions best through absolute obedience to authority. So they create laws that ordered strict punishments and rewards for behavior, kind of like Hammurabi. And a book that was written to show the philosophy of legalism is called The Art of War. It's the first known study of the planning and conduct of military operations in China. It was adopted by a dynasty named the Qin dynasty. And the Qin dynasty is going to be the dynasty to ultimately end the civil wars that were going on in China. And they're going to use legalism to do that. And it works because legalism is all about being strict with creating order. But you'll see that the mandate of heaven does not keep the Qin dynasty in power for long because legalism is very harsh and not a thing that would really be accepted by the mandate of heaven. So we're going to flip to, if you go to page 6 in your notes packet, we'll quickly do these notes on the Qin dynasty and then lead into Mulan. So the Qin dynasty is the last dynasty we're going to talk about in this class for China. At the age of 13, an emperor becomes the new ruler of the Qin dynasty in China. He's from the Qin family, but after ruling for 20 years, in 221 BCE, he's going to take on the name Shi Huangdi, which means first emperor. So he becomes Qin Shi Huangdi, the first emperor of the Qin family. He uses legalism to unite China. He began his reign by stopping all of the internal fights that were happening, all that internal civil war, by using legalism. His victories are going to double the size of China, and he became determined to unify China. So that's the extent to which the Qin dynasty was built. Yet first, in order to protect China and allow it to unify, he had to consider protecting them from the invaders, migratory invaders that were constantly coming from the north and attacking Chinese settlements. Qin Shi Huangdi aimed to defend China against these invaders. So he was part of the early process of building the Great Wall of China. Another dynasty had tried to start, and they had not built much. And Qin Shi Huangdi is going to continue to build on what they had already built on the Great Wall of China. He built it on the backs of thousands of peasants. Peasants were faced with the choice of working on the wall or dying. And sometimes working on the wall led to your death because it was a very, very tough process. The Great Wall was built partially by him. He's not going to finish it during his dynasty. And then it's going to continue to be added on by other dynasties. And eventually it's going to look like this Great Wall of China. So you can see all these different parts of it. Some fun facts. It's a protected site now. It is 13,000 miles long, made over 2,000 years. It's a continuous line. And it's not had much restoration, so it was built very well. This next part, you're not writing this. Eventually the Qin dynasty is going to fall. And I just wanted to show you this image. When Qin Shi Huangdi died, he had a complex built for him, kind of like an Egyptian tomb, where he wanted to take a quote unquote military with him to his afterlife. So while he was alive, he had workers craft out of almost like a clay structure called terracotta. Craft 8,000 soldiers, 130 chariots, 520 horses, and 150 cavalry. And they are all lifelike in size. So all of these people are the size of an actual person. All of these statues are the size of an actual person. They're called Qin Shi Huangdi's terracotta warriors. And these are all in his tomb with him. All of these terracotta warriors. It was kind of cool. Some of them came to a museum in Richmond last year, and I'll let you guys know if they come back so that you can see them. So that is it for the notes on China. What I want you to do now is you can put aside your notes packet if you want. I'll give you some time to do that. And once you've done that, I want you to go to page 6 in your worksheet packet. The top of the page says Mulan activity, learning target 3.2, 3.3, and 3.4. So I'll give you a minute to get to page 6 in your worksheet packet on China and Japan. And then I'll go over the instructions, and then we will start watching. Okay, so as you watch Mulan, in each of the boxes below, you're going to give specific examples from the movie that illustrates each of the following World History 1 standards of learning, which is what we base the test on that you guys take at the end of the year. In each box, I don't want you to just give me 2 words. I want you to describe in detail how the movie portrays that aspect of Chinese history. So what I suggest doing is making small notes at the top of each box about certain scenes that you see that show that standard. And then when you're done with the movie, or when you feel like you've gotten all that you need for that standard, I want you to write in complete sentences, maybe even 1 or 2 complete sentences, about how the movie really portrays that aspect of Chinese society. So let's read through all of them first, and then we'll start the movie. The first one, World History 1, 4.E, and 0.4E. Classical China was geographically isolated. Geography played a large part in the protection of China from foreign invaders. Mountain ranges made it difficult for invasions in mainland China. So what you'll do is you'll look throughout the movie for scenes where there are mountains, and you see scenes of fighting in the mountains, you see groups trying to come through the mountains, and you'll write those scenes there because that exemplifies that you know that standard. Okay, the next one. Migratory invaders from the north raid or attack Chinese settlements and villages. Because these invaders were constantly trying to enter China, Qin Shi Huangdi built the Great Wall of China as a line of defense against invasions. So you want to look for both of those. You want to look for the Great Wall and the invaders attacking Chinese settlements. Next one. China was governed by a succession of ruling families called dynasties. These rulers were called emperors. Chinese people strived to honor the emperors. Chinese rulers were considered divine, but they served only under a mandate of heaven as long as their rule was just. For this, it's not as obvious in the movie. You need to pick out scenes where people are talking about honoring the emperor, people are bowing towards the emperor, and so on. The next one, you need to identify You need to identify contributions of Chinese civilization, like the civil service system, where there's an emphasis on education, learning Chinese characters and texts. There's an emphasis on providing service to your Chinese government. You could see this through things such as a military draft, hint, hint, and just overall providing service to China and the emperor. Okay, flip the page to page 7. This next one you're going to kind of do throughout the whole movie. You're going to look at the Silk Road, how the Silk Road facilitated trade and contact between China and other cultures as far away as Rome. You're going to identify the following contributions that China had on the world: paper, porcelain, and silk. So throughout the movie, what I want you to do next to those bullet points is I want you to keep a tally or count every time you see one of those products. And then when the movie's done, you'll kind of write a summary of how those products played a role in the movie. So you're going to keep a tally of paper, porcelain, and silk. The next sections are a little bit harder. You're going to see these throughout the whole movie, and you need to try to pick out these aspects. For the first one, you need to identify the impact of Confucianism informing the social order in China using the following information: family being the center of life in China, respecting elders and authority, filial piety, the code of politeness and the code of honor, an emphasis on education, and most specifically ancestor worship. You're going to see that a lot in the movie. The last one, you're going to identify the impact of Taoism or Taoism. And you're going to use this information as a guide. Humility, or people being humble, living a simple life, trying to reach inner peace, and having harmony with nature. For this one, you'll see a character that really represents Taoism. And then you'll also see a lot of quotes and even a lot of song lyrics that compare something to nature. And that could be Taoism. So anything that compares a person's behavior to something in nature, that is where you will see Taoism. So that's what you're going to be doing while you watch the movie. It's not going to be paused today. And then once we're finished watching the movie, you can quickly look over if you want. We're going to do pages 8, 9, 10, and 11. 8, 9, and 10 are analyzing the songs in Mulan by verse to pick out themes that you'll see. And then you're going to do a small writing activity on Confucianism and Taoism. I want you to be thinking, for analyzing the music, I want you to be thinking constantly of the themes: Confucianism, which is all about respect; Taoism, which is all about nature. Then I want you to think about legalism, which is about military efforts and strict behavior. And then finally, I want you to think about patriarchy. Patriarchy is a male-based society where women were typically seen as inferior and having to obey the males in society. So you're going to see patriarchy a lot in the movie as well. Okay, so go to page 6. Get ready to take some notes. They don't go in order. You kind of have to continue to move around as we watch the movie to take those notes. I have 4 movie rules. And if you break any of these rules, we will stop watching the movie. Or if it's one person over and over again, we will just make them stand up and watch the movie while everyone else gets to sit down and enjoy. I have clipboards for you. So rule number 1, put your phones away completely. They should go in your book bags. Phones need to go away completely. You have a movie to watch. You don't need to be doing anything on your phone. Rule number 2, you cannot fall asleep, meaning you should not put your head down. So if I see anyone fall asleep or putting your heads down, you need to wake up, splash your face with water, do something to wake up. Third rule, you need to have limited bathroom use. If there is a constant revolving door and a line of people going to the bathroom, we will not watch the movie. You should only go to the bathroom if it's an emergency, and you should ask me or the substitute. The final rule is no talking. You shouldn't talk if you're watching a movie in a theater, and you shouldn't talk if you're watching a movie in a classroom. If you want to sing along to the music or whatever, that's fine, but try to keep try to keep talking to a minimum. Okay, I hope you enjoy it. Just